Hey everyone, welcome to Overexposed. I'm here today with Greg Roth. He's a freelance cinematographer and editor in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As you folks might know, I went out to LA recently to do some self-tape, set up a self-tape audition business with my buddy Jeremy. And Greg is one of the people who kind of helped me with some of the technical things that came up that I just didn't have time to do trial and error for. So he's kind of one of my shortcut people. So, hey, Greg, thanks for dropping in and joining me in this high-stress, high-tension situation.
Sure. And that would be my dog. Just came busting through the door.
There you go. And a cameo by...
Hi, Ellie.
Ellie, there we go. So one of the things that we're looking at here on the screen is you, we share stuff every once in a while. Your stuff's great. What I wanted to do is ask you about, just so I can learn some of the things that you did. Like, for instance, so this is actually, so maybe you can tell me just a little bit about what this is. Like, where did this come from?
Okay, so the scene that we have there is from an on-camera acting class at a local college, Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And the class is designed to give theater students an opportunity to explore and practice acting in front of a camera, which is, according to the teacher, she's that there's no such thing as on-camera acting. There's only good acting and bad acting, which is true. But there are differences between acting on stage for a live audience than acting in front of a camera for, a theatrical audience. So acting is acting, but there are some different things you have to deal with.
It's a little more subtle.
Most obviously, a little more subtle, but also, there's things that you do that you can do on camera, acting wise, that if you were to do it on stage in front of a live audience, it just wouldn't have the same impact. Like, somebody just giving a smirk or the look in their eyes when they're getting yelled at by somebody. Like, audience members can't see that without binoculars in a theater. So the power of the camera allows you to get those close-ups, and you could be like, oh, that person is angry or that person is crying. Like, when someone's crying on stage, it's pretty over the top just so you know that they're crying. But like on camera, the person can be sitting there not moving and just a tear rolls down their cheek, and it's so moving, but that's because you can see it.
So you're basically doing on-camera stuff in Philly, which I didn't know that, but that's great. Guy I met at Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. So now this clip in particular. So what we're looking at here, one of the first things that grabbed me when you shared it with me is I love the skin tones. And the first place that I go is, my first guess is that you're using incandescent lights. But you tell me, tell me a little bit about how you lit this. What kind of lights you used to light this scene?
Well, actually, this one is actually lit with daylight balanced LED panels.
No kidding.
Yep, and the lamp that's on the table in the back, I had to that's a regular incandescent bulb, and so to make it not look as orange, I actually cut a piece of blue gel into a cylinder shape and just stuck it over the bulb, so it cooled it down to match the tone of the lights. And I usually set my stuff manually. Like, I very rarely put up a white card. I mean, I'll put up a white card and hit the white balance button, but I most often in this class have a white balance set at, it's like 7,000 Kelvin. So daylight is 5,600 Kelvin. And I like to warm it up a little bit, so I will set my camera's white balance to sometimes I'll change it, but sometimes it's like 7,000, sometimes it's a little closer.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
I think I got that direction right. I know tungsten's 32, right, or incandescent is 3,200.
Right.
And
So
daylight is 56, but
yeah, I mean, to make it warmer, like, well, and not to have that, but yeah, I don't know. But I'm with you. You set a custom white balance. And do you find, well, actually, maybe talk to me a little bit more about the LED panels themselves. Like, you got my attention. Because one of the things I struggle with, so I personally have three, I mean, two of them are being used right now, just bouncing around for fun. But I have LED panels. They're great. I like them. But I literally bought, and they're icans. And
okay.
So the three that I got, they're bicolor. I love them. So I can, change the tone depending on what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have two other ones that are kind of smaller. And those bastards, like, they're not the same. Like, I can't get, when I use those, and in conjunction with the other three that I have, I can't get a white balance because I use the two little ones to, like, light the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other three are literally conflicting, even though they come from the same manufacturer. So I've created a mixed lighting condition through no fault of my own, kind of. And
so you're saying the three that should match don't match, or you're just saying the combination
do match? But literally, it's just I have two that are smaller in a different model, and
okay,
yeah, but from the same manufacturer. That's the yeah. So LEDs are a little, but to come back. So now we're back to your piece here. How big are these panels? Are these like 1 by 1? What is it? Yeah, 1 by 1 foot. I've seen big squares.
Yeah. We're only the ones that we have. We have 1 foot by 1 foot panels, and we have those are usually hanging from the grid. This is shot in a studio on our little set, and our 1 by 1 panels are hanging from the grid. And I have two smaller ones. I want to say maybe they're like 6 inches by 1 foot. Okay. Rectangles. Those I usually just keep on the ground on stands, and those also have a softbox on them, which I use most of the time.
Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, I'm following. At best, I've ever put a diffusion panel, but never a softbox. So that's interesting.
Well, I mean, the softbox. I mean, this might be a case of terminology, but I think it's just a diffusion on the front, mm-hmm. but it's surrounded in black, and the inside is shiny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's, I mean, so it is. It's diffusion, but it's softening the light too.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna check it out. I mean, now that you said something, because again, I've used diffusion paper. I've used a couple of materials.
Yeah, I use kind of whatever's around. I only have like those two softbox. I mean, it's actually, they're technically labeled, I guess, chimeras, or they're made by Chimera.
Okay.
And that's what they are.
Okay.
And I just know that's what they do. I can see if I might be able to find the link and send it to you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's always, I mean, yeah, so I'm in. Now, kind of, like, and one of the things what I'd like to do is I'll shut my mouth for a couple minutes, and I want to find the part in this scene kind of quickly where they're having the fight.
Okay.
I think your choice of cuts is kind of cool. But, I mean, and basically, for anybody, obviously, yeah, so anyone who hasn't seen this clip, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to pause. Like, so just in a couple sentences, what is this scene about, just generally? Because I want to jump into the fight, and I want to give people a little context.
Well, it's a scene the class picks scenes from popular television and movies to use as material to practice acting. So this particular scene is from the movie The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston. Basically, this couple has been having problems, marriage problems, and they just finished the dinner party, and now they're kind of like cleaning up and relaxing, and they get into a fight.
Okay. All right, so yeah, so just a quick second, I want to play this out a little bit because again, I mean, aside from your ability to light, your editing is even better, which, I mean, for what it's worth, for me, that's pretty stellar.
Oh, God damn it. If I knew it was going to be this much trouble, I would have brought home 24 fucking lemons. I would have brought home 100 fucking lemons.
Honest to God, Gary, it's not about the lemons.
Well, that's all you're talking about.
I'm just saying that it would be nice if you did things that I asked. It'd be even nicer if you did things without me having to ask you. You knew I was working today and I made that meal, and you could have thought to yourself, you could have said, yeah, I think I'm gonna get Brooke some flowers.
You said on our very first date that you don't like flowers, that they're a waste of money.
Every girl likes flowers, Gary.
You told me that you don't like flowers. Am I supposed to take that to mean that you do like flowers?
No, this is not about... God, okay, you are not getting this. God, you are not getting...
So, again, like this goes... So a couple things that you do. I mean, like So I have to edit sometimes, but I've never had to edit a situation like this. But one of the first times that I got into it, I made what is kind of like a classic mistake, which is you cut to the character that's talking, and that's not correct. Like, and literally, this is a great example of that. Like you're showing the reactions of some characters while the other one's talking. So I'll just kind of pause there and just kind of like for this part of the scene. Yeah, like how do you make these decisions?
Well, for this one in particular, I'll say that you don't necessarily, like, I wouldn't say you're incorrect to say that cutting to the person who's talking is incorrect. I mean, I would argue that it's just a creative choice. Down at the core, it's like creative choice. Like if that's what you want to do, like if you want to be the person who's speaking on camera the whole time, that's your choice. But from watching so many movies and TV shows, as an audience member, you get used to certain things that you consider to be normal. And one of them is not looking at the person who's talking. And that's really that's the only way you can get reaction shots and to have them make sense. Like if you keep the person who's speaking on camera until they're done and then you cut to a reaction, well, it's like you've essentially in real time you would have missed that reaction, or like it wouldn't make sense anymore, especially if the person has a reaction in the middle of the person's line. So in this one, I basically it was kind of a rhythm thing, and I looked for parts so each shot, this is a one camera shoot. So, we did the setup where it was just the woman, we did all her part, and then we would flip around after doing a couple takes, we'd switch to the other side and get the guy's part and cover him. So I was looking at, let's say, 6 different clips of the same part of the scene, 3 takes per person, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Like if you were able to follow me.
Yep.
And then what I'll do is I typically try to watch one whole take, and then I'll pick one take that I particularly like of one actor, and then I'll do the same for the other, and then I'll try to sync them the best I can. Now, because they're different takes, their pacing is different, the rhythm is different, so the audio is not going to line up most of the time. It'll be close, but not always. And basically, I throw them into a timeline, one on top of another, and I just kind of go back and forth, and I make note of reaction shots that I particularly like, and then I try to squeeze them in where they're appropriate and where they make sense. And that's kind of it.
Oh, that's all. So, that's it then. No, because I tell you, it's not to get, I'll just leave it at, I watched this part. I've always enjoyed the way that you edit things and the way that you piece this together. I thought it adds, the quick cuts, like it adds urgency, to the situation. It like, just from the visuals, now suddenly I know that I'm in a fight, because I think this scene would be very different if we just, only saw like one take without a lot of cuts. I mean, like there's just a nuance to it. I mean, like, do you think that's, I mean, like,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to take a step. I don't think that I know technically how this stuff works, but when you think that you have it right, you felt it. You're like, yep, boom, that's that frame, moving on, this one, and it feels right.
That's really what it comes down. Like in most of my editing, it all comes down to feel. Like not only just like an emotional feel, but even a visual feel. If it like visually, if it feels wrong, or like I'm watching it and I like wince because something doesn't seem right, then I know it's a bad cut. Mm-hmm. And it really kind of and it also then tries to play off of, what tone you're going for. Like, you could do this whole thing in a 2-shot, no edits. It's going to have a very different feel than if you were to cut it like this, where it's different, 2 different angles, and you're cutting back and forth really quick.
Yeah. Because even the exposition, like I need to move on, but I can tell you, I can talk about this all day, because, like the cuts in the beginning are a little soft, like there's more, but here it's just very quick, and you focus a lot on the reaction part, which I'm not an actor, but, I think I've heard a quote to some regard where it's not necessarily the things you say, it's how you play off the other character and you capture that. And
yeah, it's not always about what you say, it's also about how you listen and how you receive the information.
Yeah. One of the things that got my attention, and I'll kind of just like try to do my best to skip to it as fast as I can. Like, so there's this tree, right? Like, right? Mm-hmm. We see this tree. Okay. Now, it's the only thing that I saw, right? And it got my attention. And because it got my attention, and this is at like minute 1, if you're following along at home, like 1:06. And basically, the shadow looks a little high on the wall. It's not a knock. I love what you're doing. I'm trying to learn here, and I know that working in a tight space is difficult. So I'm just trying to figure out like how you felt about that when you did it. And if I could be all wet.
I think that might be one of the things that, being there on set, I didn't notice it as much at first. Because part of it is, it's a pretty obvious shadow, so the human eye should be able to pick that up, and I probably did. But I do a lot of this stuff that I do for this class. We're so crammed on time that it's I can't make it perfect all the time.
I'm with you.
But I'm looking at it now. I'm trying to think of how that shadow got there, and I think it's from the lamp that's on the table.
Yeah. Yep, I was going to go there. If I could jump there quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really it, and it's like, well, it's not too much you can do.
Like, it's just something, it's literally one of the things that I saw, and I'm like, like angle, and if I could find it quickly, I would. But yeah, there's the lamp on the table. We talked about that. And yeah, no, so like, boom, here it is. You see it again here at, second to 11. And I really, like, it is, yeah, anyway, it's, because I've run into this, and it's like, how the hell, like, it's very frustrating. You're dealing with really tight spaces, and trying to control light without a billion flags is like a whole other thing. Something that I thought was particularly cool, and look how awesome it was that I got right into it. So at minute 3, 54 seconds, something that I heard when learning about photography, the foreground or the subject is just as important as the background. And, here we have we don't just have a blank wall, right? Like, we have some nice we have some texture from the shades. So, like, that's awesome. I don't know. Is there anything to anything to mention here about like how, like, I mean, is there an external light there that's making that happen because you're in a studio? Like, what's?
Yeah, there's just, I have a light. So we have 8 wall panels, essentially. You can see the dividing lines. They're basically the width of a door. So it's like 3 to 4 feet wide. So we have 8 panels, 2 of which have windows cut out in them, and we have blinds hanging over them. So basically I just have a light behind the blinds shining through, and I just angled it to shoot through the window so it would hit the wall and not him.
Yes. Okay.
And
Actually, that would...
sometimes trying to capture the shadow of the blinds and not have it be either too obvious or not apparent at all can be tricky. I think that's a lot to do with distance. Like, this is just off the top of my head, but it's like you would put the light physically closer to the blinds.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might make the shadows a little more defined, but if you back the light further away, they become less defined. So,
yeah,
you know, it's kind of one of those
the noir
things.
thing, you know, right? Like you have like that detective in the, you know what I mean? And like you have the hard lines across the face, like, and especially when you're dealing with LED panels, and we can talk about this another day, but LEDs and regular lights don't act the same way. Like, I can promise you that. There's something about having a grid of LEDs that it doesn't, because I tried to do some Venetian blind stuff and I saw some things that I didn't expect. But anyway, and that actually, to that point, you make it look natural. I really, I mean, I've seen a lot of your stuff. I really like this. Was there anything that you like particularly struggled with, like that you're like, I gotta, like, because there always seems to be at least one, but maybe not. Maybe this is, I don't know.
In this particular shot, or just in general?
Well, I mean, just in general. I mean, because like really, I mean, in this shot, there's still that nice, deep, defining shadow, you know, on the back side. You know, like the light comes in.
Yeah.
There's no distracting nose shadow. I mean, it's very, like, it's lit very well. I might just end up rambling a bit, but like with this particular shot, like the one thing I've been trying to do, and if you look closely at a lot of, you know, just movies and television, a lot of the lighting you'll see is what they call far side key lighting. So in this particular shot, this is actually near side key lighting. And a lot of people, like a lot of DPs and cinematographers, say they just like the look and feel of far side key lighting. So far side key lighting would be, in this shot, the brightest light on the actor's face would be coming from the left. So in this case, it's the dark side of his face. So the light would hit him on his right, and the shadows would be cast to his left, or the viewer's right. And in instances like that, they sometimes say it contours the face a little better, and especially like the jawline and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it kind of just helps give them a little more pop. So like since the background is dark, if I were to light him from the dark side, it kind of would separate him more from there's more contrast between the dark and the light. However, going against that, if you actually were in this in this house, I mean, there's essentially like a ceiling light or something there. So it's like, that's where the light would be coming. Yes.
That's where the light would be coming from. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. That means it's natural.
Yes.
But
yes,
it doesn't. So it's like, it's natural, but it doesn't live up to my like wanting to do what I think is like the correct way or the preferred way, which would be like what they say is like far side key lighting or something. No. And additionally, like they also, another thing I try to keep an eye on is their eyes. Like that's, you know, the eyes that are really important to the human face and like the emotion. And a lot of DPs will have a tiny little light just so they can get a glint in the eye, like that little white spot that just shows that the eye is there and that it's alive. Yeah.
Yep.
Now here, I don't have that. Like, because of where the lights are positioned and just the design and contours of his face, there's no light hitting his eyes. I mean, it's not like he doesn't look like he's dead or,
And it shows up here.
like unemotional.
You skip ahead a scene, you skip ahead a frame or so, and you see it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's also a.
Yeah, it's not as apparent. Like, if I skip ahead to like 402 at the girl, especially, and
Yeah, you
like,
see it in her a lot.
It's a little easier.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, because he's taller than she is a little bit,
Right.
So
And are the
give or
lights,
take.
is the same light doing both of them, or is it two separate lights? Like you have, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's generally the same light. I might have tweaked
That's
them a little bit, but I
didn't
think
know
it's.
one light could do that.
I generally try to run with set one light to work for both ways, but doesn't always work that way.
Sure. No, but that's because and again, I just kind of think out loud. I'm like, yeah, that's going to help minimize, because every light you add is going to add a shadow, and anyway, no, that's very, very interesting. Well.
Yeah. Well, and this shoot too was kind of, I'd say it was kind of a messy shoot in terms of lighting, because I was constantly changing stuff, because like we would do one take and I'd be like, oh, this shadow was bothering me, so I'd move the light, and then that would make the corner darker, or
right.
like where the tree is darker, and then it's like, for the wide shot, the light was in a different spot because I couldn't move it as close to the actors. So then it's like, when we move in for the close-ups, then I move the light closer, but then that changes the background, and it's like...
Right. You have the intensity of that, and then you're supposed to cut it all together, and it's just supposed to all make sense and be seamless. You do all this work, and it needs to be invisible so that when most people watch it, it just don't be distracting. Which...
Yeah,
is an interesting segue, because it's about I mean, like you talk about it's kind of was serendipitous that you shared this with me. I didn't know that this was on tape stuff. This is on tape on steroids, because I've seen what a particular guy is doing in LA, and it's a lot less elaborate, but that has inspired a friend, colleague, insert whatever word here. I had some equipment in a closet. He's doing self-tape auditions and also does like acting coaching to help make, which really kind of takes your audition and kind of gives it the boost that it needs. But for me, technically, I took out two fluorescent lights balanced at 55K. I mean, they're Cowboy Studio. It's like a really, it's almost like a standard entry level kind of proposition. Two soft boxes, and each of these fixtures has the ability to handle 5 these bulbs, and I mean, they're really nice. So anyway, and we're not going to look at this footage, but like I ran into some difficulties, even though, daylight, the temperature changes throughout the day. So even though, at high noon, it could be one, and then at sunset, it's a completely different other one. And that was, so anyway, I'm just, and I go out there and I'm trying to, in 2 days, put together this, decent thing, because the goal is to create an audition where the viewer isn't distracted by the production bit. It needs to be invisible, very much like I think your piece was. But at the end of the day, it's a talking head. And, kind of coming back to, which, I mean, here we are, we're talking to this guy's amazing. I'm just going to tell you his first name, because, I mean, his name's Ted. And his story is really cool, but he did a demo for us that we could use for our business, and I sent this to you. But I mean, always looking for notes, trying to figure out what I did right, what I could do better. because I respect what you're doing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're able to see it, but
It's
Ted.
still.
Yeah, it's just a still. I mean, it's an amazing performance, but that's not what this is all about. I'll put a link somewhere and people can look at it if they want. But really, I mean, technically, and I'm going to shut up. I'm not even going to ask leading questions. Like, I mean, you look at this and just tell me what Greg Roth thinks. Good, bad, ugly, you know?
No, I think it's really good. Like, you had sent this to me before, so I've seen it. But I think it turned out really well. And, you know, if I were to compare, you know, I compare my scene to yours, like, I would almost say yours is better than mine. In the sense, like, I'm looking at it and it's like you have, you know, I can see that there's the key light, and you have what that far side key set up. So the side of the face that we have, I always say the ear that's the camera can see is the near side, and then the ear that the camera can't see, especially when they're looking at an angle, is the far side. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, you have you see the face, nothing's, you know, there's no deep shadows, but you have the shadow of the nose, so you can see that they're not like flat faced. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, but there's enough, you know, the shadows aren't, you have enough fill light that the shadows aren't so dark that you're like, what's over there. Also, you know, he's casting a shadow on the wall, and it's hard to see. I mean, it's noticeable, but not, you know, super noticeable. So it's like, it's great that, you know, you're using really soft sources, and, you know, you have the ratio of key light and fill light enough that it's only showing one shadow, not like two. And, you know, it's natural because, I mean, he's sitting in front of a wall.
Yeah.
But, like, if it was something that bothered you, you know, I would say then just move him further from the wall.
Well, and
so at least.
Yeah. And it comes back to, like, your limitations. I mean, just like you said before, you're like, this is, you know, these auditions come in, and it was so challenging. And I remember, I mean, I'm talking to my friend Jeremy, and, like, literally I had to be reminded of what the goal was. The goal isn't to come out and make an art piece, you know, it's to come out and try to upgrade the average, like to try to get above the curve and create something where it's invisible so that, you know, anybody, casting directors, whoever's looking at this can see it, and they're going to see the performance, not anything that could distract them. So I'm trying to really walk the middle, which I'm not really known to do. And I mean, because there are things like noise reduction, like I could like take away the little, like I mean, you could really make this more human than human, but maybe that's so. Because rendering is a thing, you know, like you can only do, I mean, for this particular thing, you know, I did, like I was telling you a little bit earlier, but, you know, it's fast color correction. I got to get the levels right. The light was actually a little underpowered. You know, it's amazing. Fluorescents are great, but it's amazing how many you need to make an impact at that distance. I mean, we're dealing with a tight studio space in Los Angeles. I mean, it's gorgeous, but you got that. So yeah, you're right. Moving farther away, but I don't have that room, and that's one thing. You know, so you just gotta kind of make these trade-offs. But the key stuff, and yeah, the softbox note is nice, and I mean, his performance matches it. I mean, but like saturation is always something I'm overly concerned about. Like, I don't want to make it too rich. I don't want to make it too. I haven't quite figured out how to use the vector scope to really key in and dial in. I mean, it's because I tell you what would make this.
And I think a lot of that comes from. I'd say it's a creative choice and a personal choice.
Because your skin tones are really rich, and they have that nice orangey blockbuster feel. I mean, that's what we're used to, like really rich skin tones and some blues. Like watch as many films as you want, and you're going to see it every time. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
but the skin looks natural. You know what I mean? But it's not.
Yeah.
It's not Hollywood. You know. So it gets tricky.
No, I mean, and if anything, you could potentially bump the white warmer, and just give a little more. Because looking at it now, I mean, he's wearing a blue shirt, which doesn't help. But like the white wall, if I had to say, it's on a cooler white side. So you could probably, if you were to bump up like the reds and stuff, just a tiny little bit, you could get a little closer to that, glow.
Yeah, even if it's just I'm with you. Like a warming filter.
Or like I'm talking like, in terms of numbers, like 0.001 might even do it. That might not even be enough, but it's very, very small.
No, it's fabulous. Yeah, the biggest thing that actually bothers me about this, and I'm not quite sure how it got there. I have some ideas. There's like a scuff on the wall. And I'm like,
oh, I see that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was my screen or if that was...
Yeah, if screen, camera, no, that was literally on the wall. And we actually removed it before I left in a really dramatic way. Hey, Jer. But yeah, so, I really appreciate it. I know you got to jump and you got things to do. But, no, this was great. I really appreciate kind of the time. And I know that this was a very, literally, how did this get set up? Like, you're getting back to me on something that I sent you, and then you're like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, okay, this is just awesome. And I'm tired of having conversations like this because I think that they might be helpful to somebody else. You've given me some technical bits, like with, the far side key and that's, haven't heard that before. So
that's good.
Yeah, I think there's really some useful stuff in here, and I just want to appreciate your time, tell you I appreciate your time. So,
it's always fun to get feedback on work. I feel like that's something I never do enough of. And it's it's easy to go up to somebody and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And if they have no experience, for them to say, yeah, it's good, but I know you had experience in photography, which is slightly different than videography, depending on your approach, but the same general concepts of light and stuff are there. So it's like you have similar eyes and an eye for lighting and shadows and stuff. So it's like just your feedback's just as important.
You're like, this is bugging me. I don't know how you fix this, but fix it. Audio is the next thing that I'm going to tackle. How do you, without treating the walls, right? Like there's always a thing, but it's like, how do you not treat the walls and still without a lapel mic too, and get really clean audio? But that'll be for another day. But no, thanks again, Greg.
Yep.
And guess that's it. And hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to randomly grab some other person that I think's brilliant in the future and try to talk them into doing this. But until then, thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. Leave a comment below, subscribe, and all that good stuff, right? Yeah. Have a good one.